Good day, happy July, all of that good stuff. This is a marvelous, once again, bringing to you some off the wall out there, but informative content. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your time and attention. Like I always say, that's two things that you cannot get back. So I appreciate you. This video is part 3 to Where Did Humans Come From series that I wanted to do. So before I get to that, I just want to say, please subscribe, like, comment on the video, give me your feedback, because this isn't just me talking to you. This is about engaging with as many people as possible to get to a higher awareness. So that is the purpose of these videos. So with that, subscribe, and this is part 3. So in this part, I wanted to go over how you can actually, what you're witnessing when you look in the sky, you're actually witnessing like a life and death reincarnation process. And this is going to go over the Egyptians. And the Egyptians knew a lot, like heavily, what I discussed in part 1 and part 2. In part 1, we discussed that human beings are stars. And as stars, our origin, our birthplace, is not here on Earth, but it's actually in a fixed star system. And I briefly went over how stars come from these constellations in the galaxy and then through a process make their way through different spheres and different planets to get to Earth. So it's what we see in this human form. So that was part 1. Part 2, I covered what angels are and gods, and how angels are pretty much angles of light. Angels are created and formed from the different mathematical angles that planets and stars form with each other. And then when they form these different angles, they create a consciousness. And these consciousness that are created have intelligence. And this intelligence have a function based on divine order and divine hierarchy. And that function varies. And some of these intelligences that's formed by the way that galaxy forms within itself with planets and stars, they are angels and archangels. And these angels guide stars on their journey through the galaxy, and then they guide us when we're here on Earth. So no matter where a star is, whether it reincarnates in the human body or whatever sphere it's on, these intelligent things that we call angels, which are really light formations, guide us to our purpose that our soul had before it got to this planet. That was part 2. Part 3, we're going to cover how the Egyptians knew this and how they set up a whole system to actually get the soul back to where it belongs through an organized formulaic process. So we'll be going over this book a little bit to examine that. This is called Imhotep, the Architect, the African Architect of the Gods. And the Egyptians was into a lot of heavy stuff. But one of the things primarily that they was into was guiding souls back to certain constellations. And one of the major, if not the main star system that they dealt with was Sirius. In my other videos, I'm going to cover the importance of Sirius. Sirius is so important that America has tied its destiny and creation to this, along with the Egyptians. But what we're going to cover today is something called the Ahket. Okay, so the Ahket is basically a time frame, or it's a period in which the great flood happened in Egypt. And during this flood is also a time when Sirius was at a certain position. Whenever Sirius star system was in this position, it represented a new year for the Egyptians. But also during this Ahket, the Egyptians created systems to get the deceased individuals, like kings, to get their souls from Earth back to Sirius, back to these other constellations. And they did it at particular points around sunrise in the horizon. That's what the Ahket is. It's a point beneath the horizon in which souls transcend from wherever they're at, if they're in a lower underworld or vibration, to get to the higher constellations. So I'm going to just read some of that from here just to give a better context, to show how the Egyptians knew that not only were we stars, but they actually set up pyramids and all of these elaborate systems to guide the stars, the souls, when they died, back to where they were and guide them through the cosmos. That's how advanced they was. So here we go. She, Sothis Sirius, shines into her temple on New Year's Day, and she mingles her light with that of her father Ra on the horizon. The reddish glow, birth blood, in the east that appears an hour or so before sunrise was called Ahket by the ancient Egyptians and was regarded as a sort of cosmic combustion chamber, or better still, a rebirth chamber that dead celestial bodies pass through on their way out of the underworld, taking on new life as they emerged into the light of day. So, what is that saying? This Ahket is kind of like it's a collapse point in the skies right when sunrise is taking place, right underneath the horizon. And it was when humans died, these souls were reborn. So in the first video, I mentioned how stars go back to where we came from. Human beings, when they die, they make the journey back to these constellations and these star systems. The Egyptians had a system to where they can guide the soul back to these different star systems at point of death. When humans die, their soul goes into certain periods in the cosmos and in the spheres. And in this lingering period, the Egyptians understood how to get that soul from these underworld and from these different places to get it back to its high point. This point was around sunrise. So when you see sunrise, when you see that period when the sun is coming out, that right there, without us even knowing, you're witnessing rebirth. You're witnessing the deceased go back to where they came from, and we don't even know it. Like, we take sunrise for granted. But when you're looking at these things, what's actually taking place around this time period is that your loved ones, my loved ones, people's loved ones, when they die, they're actually transcending to different realms. This Ahket is a realm in which they dwelled, and this takes place during sunrise. And as they go from death to these new points, they become reborn again. They become stars again. They become light beings, okay? This is what the Ahket is. The Ahket, according to the American Egyptologist James P. Allen, an expert on this issue, is not the horizon per se, as many have supposed, but rather a region below it. Allen calls this zone the Ocnifier, as it was there that the dead sun and stars were regenerated and rebirthed as Ox, spiritualized beings or light spirits. So this point under the horizon, when you see the sunrise and sunset, this is when souls become light beings. This is when they start to transcend into a different form. So in Islam, or even in New York, they say, "What's up, Ak?" Even that's not unconscious, because Ak, according to this, is a light being. So when we die, the process of us becoming who we were as stars takes place when the sun dies, and that's this horizon. This is what the Egyptians were doing in their mystery system. Okay. Though usually translated horizon, the Ahket is in fact a region below the visible horizon, rather than a dividing line between night and day. It is the region through which the sun passes in the hour between its emergence from the Duat, which is darkness, right? Because that's the underworld, darkness. They say that in the wintertime, because the sun is supposedly at its lowest point and you have less daylight hours, they say that that's points of darkness. They say that's when the sun dies. That's what your December 25th is about, because from the 21st to the 24th, it appears as if the sun is always still, but as it appears in the sky, it's at a still point based in relation to how we see it in the universe. After the 24th, it is said that the sun starts to rise past the equator, right? Until we get to the summer solstice, and that's what your Passover is, the sun passing over the equator. So they say that in the wintertime months, in the fall months, is when the sun starts to die. That's the time of darkness. So when you see the Duat in Egypt or the underworld, that's part of what they're talking about, the sun dying, right? So in this instance, when it says, rather than dividing line between night and day, it is the region through which the sun passes in the hour between its emergence from the Duat, the underworld, at first light and its appearance in the sky at dawn. So when you see the sun begin to fade away and it's nighttime, or when you see the sun begin to rise, these are points in which souls, after they're dead, start to transcend to a higher place or a lower place, depending upon what they did when they was here. So anytime you see a sunrise or a sunset, think of the fact that you're watching dead people and their souls. That whole thing that you're witnessing at that point in time, deceased individuals are transcending to a whole new part of the galaxy. So we should not take sunrise and sunset for granted, because these are transitionary periods. So this is also why it said that you're supposed to wake up at sunrise, don't eat after sunset, right? All of these things are related because of the type of energy and strength that takes place during these times. Because you have life and death. It's like a ceremony taking place in the sky and in the universe during these times. So these aren't just arbitrary, beautiful sights that we see. Sunrise and sunset, these are actual regenerative life and death time periods in which you have souls getting up out of earth, okay? The Ahket is more than a zonal passage. However, it is literally the place of becoming an Ak, where the deceased Ba means soul, and the sun together are transformed into a newly effective Ak mode of existence. So when people die, okay, at the point of death, their soul, when the sun goes into a different part, like sunrise or sunset, when the sun mixes with that soul, they become a whole new being, a light being, stars, right? They get back to transcend to where they came from. In the antechamber of the pyramid, the king becomes Ak in the Ahket. So this process is the Ahket. The process of transformation is reflected in the generic term often applied to spells such as those in the pyramid text, literally Akifiers. The New Kingdom Book of Night describes the sun rising from the month of the Ahket door into the day sky at the first hour of daylight. In possession of your Ak, emerge from the Ahket. Emergence in the day in the proper form of a living Ahket. Because the pyramid texts make it abundantly clear that the soul of the departed king is a star that is reborn in the east at dawn after a protracted period of invisibility, 70 days in the Duat, or the starry underworld. So, what is that saying? That's saying that the soul, right? Once the person dies, in this case, they're talking about kings, because it was really royalty that had the honor and privilege of actually having their bodies preserved, in a special way. That's why you see in Egypt a lot of burials. They had a lot of their belongings with them. There was a lot of things buried with the deceased. So if you was royalty, you had these elaborate systems set up so that your soul can be guided to where you was. If you wasn't royalty, you didn't really get this. Okay, so that's why here they're talking about kings. So what they're describing is when a person dies, there's a point of confusion. Okay, there's a point of confusion, and in that confusion, it has to be cognizant of itself, depending upon what sphere it's in. The Egyptians understood this. Because they understood this, they set up these ceremonies to guide the soul back to the realm that they were supposed to get to. And they knew in order to guide the soul back properly to get to where they needed to get to, they had to do it at certain time periods. These time periods, as you see, was at dawn, right? So when the sun set, right? When the sun set, this is when the best time was to transition a deceased person and their soul to different parts of the galaxy. That's called the Ahket. And these beings becoming light beings from this plane after death, they were called Ox. What's up, Ak? Okay? Spiritualized light beings. So at the point when the sun is fading into darkness or the underworld, that period with the soul transcends them. So these are, when it says combustion chambers, this is like a collapsing transitional process. Okay? And here it says a star that is reborn, because they were once stars. When they came here, they were stars or souls trapped in the human body. When they died, they were reborn in the east at dawn for a period of invisibility. So when this happened, you couldn't see the soul. And they said that period of invisibility was 70 days in the darkness, in the starry underworld. This period of invisibility, the Ba, the soul star in the Duat, the underworld, is given as 70 days in the Carlsberg First Papyrus, the content of which dates from 1300 to 1100 BC. So, at the point of death, this soul goes into a period of disappearing for 70 days. And in that 70 days, that goes back to what I described in the first part, where the soul now has to shed its any earthly things that it carries before it can go back to the state of purity in the fixed constellations. It has to shed matter, because remember, matter to the soul is poison. So before you get to the origin point, which is these fixed stars, the soul has to shed the poison that it accumulated in matter, in material form, in flesh, because souls are depositories for experience. So whatever realm these souls dwell in, they carry the memory of where they're at. So if they're dwelling in Saturn, if they're dwelling in this constellation, if they're dwelling in Venus, whatever experiences they have in these bodies, they carry a memory with whatever they went through. So on Earth, they carry those experiences plus the experiences they accumulated on Earth. Whatever the soul has, it has to shed in order to get to where it came from. If there's a difficulty in shedding these things that they accumulated in the material world, whatever plane of existence that they're in after death, the soul, it has to go through a certain time period in that place in order for it to transition to a higher level. So you can't get to a higher level carrying baggage. And this is why on Earth they say let it go. You got to forgive. Forgiveness is not even, and when you understand it spiritually, even though it might be hard to forgive on this plane, when you look at the fact that you cannot get to where you came from, your origin point in the fixed stars, if you don't get rid of all of this material baggage, then you start to see a really bigger picture of your soul, which transcends this. So from that vantage point, you start to look at having to purify yourself here, so when you do die, it's a smooth or smoother transition to get back to your origin place in the constellations, as opposed to you dwelling in a whole new place outside of Earth to have to go through some kind of hell because of what you didn't learn here on Earth and because of what you accumulated while you was here. That's the purpose of shedding all of these things while you're living, so your transition in death can be smooth. Now, the Egyptians understood this, so this is why they set up these elaborate systems in order to guide the soul on its journey from this underworld that I just described, and it's not by itself, okay? The Bas, the souls, go forth and they travel sky at night, the rising of stars. When the Ba is seen by the living, it is indeed a star. The people do not see it by day. Like daytime, you don't see the stars, right? One sees that this is how the Ba lives there. You see it shining forth in the sky. So in the daytime, like right now, the dead souls are transitioning. There's tons of people that die every day. These souls, once they die, they're dwelling in certain realms. They call it the Duat or the underworld. Again, the Duat or the underworld are places where the soul is shedding its baggage from material planes to get back to non-material planes. In this duat, which is happening constantly, you can't see this process in the daytime, but this process you can visualize and see at night. So when you're looking at stars, you're looking at individuals or souls that just got there, that are transitioning there, or that are already there. So next time you see a sunrise and sunset, you're looking at rebirthing of you, of me, of your ancestors, of your loved ones, every day. Every day you look at a sunset or a sunrise, this is what you're looking at. So you gotta just, that's heavy. Like, we just look at stars and we think it's just lights in the sky. No, we look at sunrise and sunset and look at the horizon and say that's just a beautiful picture. It's more than that. It is a constant regeneration of the dead, period. Becoming alive again in a whole different form that we call stars. Okay. Orion, Sa, is enveloped in the dawn light when the living one bathes in the Ahket. Canis Major is enveloped in the dawn light when the living one bathes in the Ahket. The king Unas is enveloped in the dawn light when the living one bathes in the Ahket. Now, they're reading from the pyramid text in Egypt. An astronomer, even an amateur, quickly realizes that the rebirth cycle described in the ancient text is actually observable, because the non-circumpolar stars, like, for example, those of Orion, Leo, Canis Major, containing Sirius, do in fact disappear into the western horizon, into the underworld. Visually, the star disappears because the sky is too bright with daylight. It cannot be seen the whole time it is passing above the horizon. After 70 days or so, it emerges again in the east just before sunrise in the Ahket. I'll read that again. After 70 days or so, it emerges again in the east, right? These stars emerge or rise in the east. Sun rises in the east. After enduring 70 days of tenebrous duat underworld, the star's light mingles with the red glow of the dawn light, the light of the not yet risen sun, and is now deemed to be in the Ahket. So this is important too, because when you have loved ones that pass, right, being that they're transitioning from from this place to a whole different realm, right, that the soul has not been in for who knows how long. This is why it's important to offer up your loved ones some offerings within that period. Here it's giving you 70 days. So in that time period, right after your loved ones die, it's vital to give them offerings, because in those offerings, it's kind of like you're helping them, just like the Egyptians helped their souls. Now we don't do none of this. People die, we go to a funeral, it's a wrap. But clearly, it's more than that. Clearly, the souls need some assistance, or without that assistance, they're gonna go through the same kind of confusion that we go through here on earth, where we can't figure something out, when we're lost, when we're confused. So this is important, because we have to stop seeing life as just this. We have to stop seeing things just earthly, because we didn't come from here. Your soul didn't come from here. So when you die, or when your loved ones die, that soul has to get back, and them getting back is a process. So it's like attempting to go to California, and you're in New York, and then you go to the airport and you don't know how you got to the airport. You don't know if you're going to California. All you know is that you just arrived at the airport. You don't have no idea why you're there, right? You don't have no ticket. You don't even know what's going on. You barely know who you are in this place. So that's the same thing when someone dies. So that's why it's important, when you have loved ones that pass, to give them their offering, so at least they have the strength and the energy for this mission that they have going back to the stars. You know, because we're not taught any of this, we don't set up systems to guide these souls back to where they came from to have a smooth transition. So sometimes they get stuck longer than they have to. I'll cover that in another video. So in this darkness, when you see nighttime, that right there, nighttime, you're seeing new stars being born. A star is born. That's what this is talking about, and that comes from the Ahket. So the point between dark and light, the Ahket, that is when transition happens with souls and the rebirth, and they become light beings again. Okay. Let's see. Yes, and where it undergoes a transformation or rebirth into an Ak and emerges into the sky, the world of the living. Okay, so the sky is the world of the living. The living God, the king, stretches the cord with joy. With his glance toward the Ak, the light being of the bull star, Big Dipper constellation, he establishes the temple house of the mistress Thundera. So all of this is saying that these constellations are home. These are return points. So when you see movies and stuff like that, they're always going to mention Sirius or Orion or Big Dipper, like Men in Black, the cat right here, the Orion on his neck. That is because they are telling you that this is the origin point of where we came from. So I wanted to do this video to conclude the series, to kind of piggyback from part one, to show that the Egyptians understood this. And the Egyptians set up a whole process to guide the soul. So in concluding this video, you have loved ones, or even for yourself, because we're all going to die from and transition from this plane. Get in the mindset of, wow, how can I have my soul be guided when we pass away, as opposed to just haphazardly dying, right? And then your soul is lost. So just think about that. These are whole new concepts that as we're gaining consciousness, as time is going on and people are getting wiser, these are conversations that should be regular. Okay, these shouldn't be things that are far-fetched. What happens when you die, right? If we're showing that your soul, which is us, which is stars, has a process of getting in and out of Earth, don't let your soul be confused. Don't let your ancestors' soul be confused when they die. If you don't have the knowledge, which we haven't been taught, like these Egyptians, of how to guide your deceased loved ones to where they came from, the least we can do is offer them something to give them strength on that journey. This way they're not lost. This way that journey doesn't take longer. And whatever pain, the equivalent of pain is in those fears, is lessened because they have some assistance. You know, and they punish you too for not doing this. So with that, thank you again for your attention. Please subscribe to the video, comment, engage, let me know your thoughts, and enjoy your week. Peace.